Um, the behavior that I am talking in here, we assume that function B is working correctly. We call that mocking. Okay, we mock the function B's behavior. So we tell that our testing case, okay, now the function B is testing or function B is working as this mocked value. Okay, so whenever we want to make a call, okay, we would be mocking the function's B behavior. Okay, say for example, when we are calling function B, it is returning a number, and we can say when we are executing test case against function A and function B is returning a number, we would say before we execute the test A, we will say something like this. It's in code, okay, but I will explain it in plain English. Before we execute the test cases against function A, if for some reason within the execution time of the function A, if it is calling function B for some reason, if it is calling function B, make sure to return number 1 or whatever the number you like. Okay, so that kind of behavior that we can do. Okay, so when we are writing a unit test, make sure we are testing only the function or a method that we are supposed to do. Okay, if that function is depending on someone else or something else, make sure we do not write a test for those things. We will be mocking those things. We will be having mocked values or sample values. But other than that, we will be not take caring the other functions that is going to be there. Okay, that is rule number 1 of writing unit tests. Okay, and another thing is, so we will be focusing on one single business use case. Okay, if there are dependencies, that is okay. But in either case, we will be only focusing on any function. Right. So, the functionality in here is that when we are writing a unit test, we normally test on the business logic, the function itself, nothing else. And the next thing that we would like to talk, I mean, there are like a lot of things. I'll just go through the highlights. Okay. So the other thing, as I mentioned earlier, say for example, when we are writing the unit test, okay, we are depending on huge calculation, huge function, or sometimes a network call, or maybe an out system wide something from outside. Okay, the function AB scenario that I have explained earlier. Let's assume that function B is taking a lot of time to respond. It is gonna be making a network call or something like that. But any of those functions, any of the values, we do not need to care, or we do not need to worry, since we are mocking it. Okay, since we are giving a false value. Okay, false values in the sense, I'm not talking about a wrong value. We are giving an expected value, but it is not from the original source. Okay, not like we are calling the actual function B, but if we call function B, it will return something like this. That's what mocking is all about. Okay, if we call the actual thing, what it will return is like the mocking process. So in a scenario like that, what we'll need to do, we need to do is that uh, we need to do that is we are avoiding huge API calls, huge application calls, huge blocking process. No matter the function call, we can mock it and we can work with that. But remember, when you are mocking, do not mock anything from the actual test case that we are doing, right? We can't assume that our testing function, okay, if you are testing function A, do not mock anything returning from there. That is not the purpose of testing. When we are testing, if you are depending on something else, those dependencies can be mocked. Okay, so we can avoid a lot of pain points when we want to, when we are working with such application. So unit test gives us that capability that we do not need to rely on external sources, external values. We can simply mock these things and work with what we have. Okay, so that is one good um, advantage, or one of the most um, promising points when we are using a unit test. Okay, so other things is that when we are writing unit test, the most important thing that is the execution speed. Okay, so there are other test cases as I mentioned earlier. Okay, there will be like a lot of other testing type. We'll discuss all those things. Uh, Test cases like end-to-end test, component test, backlog test. So either of those test cases, the unit test is considered the most fast. Okay, the reason behind that unit tests are faster than the others, unit tests most of the time are only logics. Okay, when we are writing a unit test against something, we are testing we are testing a business logic. We are not going to look at UIs. Okay, we are not going to look at button colors. We are not going to look at the behaviors of that. No, we are simply purely focusing on what we call the business logic. Okay, so the business logic, when we are working with any business logic, we do not need to load a lot of things. Okay, for example, if you guys can remember, a pure business logic is like something like a function, a Node.js function, or sometimes Kotlin function, whatever, a basic programming language function. Okay, so when we are doing such a unit test, remember we do not need to load the whole framework to make sure it is working. For example, um, we need say for example, we need database connectivity to be happening. If you are using a web application, we need all the other modules to load in order to test some things. Okay, but in unit test, we are solely focusing on one small piece, one small business logic of that application. We don't need database connectivity to select a business scenario like that. If that business scenario, if that business logic is requesting a database connectivity, as I mentioned earlier, we should mock it. Okay, we are simply mocking it. The database connectivity, if you are getting database values, we are mocking that. Okay, we are not going to actually call the database and get those values. We are simply gonna fake it. Okay, and what will happen is, due to that reasons, we do not need to instantiate database connectivity. We do not need to instantiate the frameworks. No, we are only testing the function and that function, and it's business logic. That's it. So so in a scenario like that, um, In a scenario like that, unit tests are considered the most fastest one. It does not need any framework, no database connectivity. No, it's just gonna purely test on the business logic. It will be faster. Okay. So remember, compared to others, unit test will be the most fastest.